Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we are decoding something absolutely massive, and that is the history of human conflict. We're going to look right past the dates and the armor to figure out exactly why humans actually go to battle. By the end of this, I promise you'll be looking at history and honestly the world today in a completely different way.
So let's kick things off with a pretty fundamental question. What actually separates a random street brawl or, say, a quick schoolyard argument from an actual historical war? When you're 13, a conflict might just mean a massive shouting match with a friend. But in history, the word conflict carries some massive, world-changing weight.
To really understand that weight, we need an official definition. Basically, war is a long-lasting and organized conflict where massive groups, we're talking countries, governments, or large rebel armies, use systematic force and violence against each other. And why do they go through all that? To win control over power, land, freedom, or resources. The absolutely crucial words here are massive, systematic, and ultimate control. It's never accidental, it's highly intentional.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. What is a war? 2. The 3 rules of war. 3. Glory, independence, and revenge. 4. Morals, resources, and land. 5. Trade and religion. And finally, 6. Decoding future conflicts.
Section 1. What is a war? Setting the historical baseline. History demands scale, time, and serious organization. It is so important to grasp the difference between an everyday conflict that you might see in your own life and a true geopolitical event. A geopolitical event literally shapes borders, changes laws, and affects millions of lives. It's not just a quick brawl that bows over by the time the afternoon bell rings.
Section 2. The 3 rules of war. Your checklist for decoding history.
Okay, so if you're going to decode history, you need a framework. Here are 3 steps to look out for. Number 1 is scale and time. How big is it, and how long does it last? A real war involves a continuous, lasting period of back-and-forth fighting. It's not a one-off attack. Number 2 is organization. Who is actually doing the fighting? And number 3 is the big goal. Let's actually break these down a bit more.
For that organization rule, a conflict has to be planned by massive official groups. Think national armies, governments, or highly structured rebel forces. It isn't just a chaotic riot or a sudden crime wave. And then there's the big goal. It's not about causing random damage just for the fun of it. One side is using massive physical force or advanced tech with the specific purpose of breaking the other side's strength. They want to force a total surrender to take their territory, power, or freedom. That is the true anatomy of a war.
Section 3. Glory, independence, and revenge. The personal and national grudges.
It's honestly fascinating to contrast 2 vastly different human motives here. On one hand, you have personal glory. Back in the 16th century, King Henry VIII of England and King Francis I of France launched these continuous, unbelievably costly military campaigns, largely just to establish their own personal dominance, legacy, and prestige over Europe. It was literally a clash of massive royal egos. But then compare that to independence. Between 1775 and 1773, the 13 American colonies armed themselves to completely sever ties with the dominant British Empire. They definitely weren't fighting for ego. They were fighting to escape taxation and governance so they could build their very own sovereign nation.
And that brings us to our 3rd motive, which is revenge. Sometimes a state attacks systematically just to punish an old enemy for a past wrong. A prime historical example? Alexander the Great. Between 356 and 323 BCE, he launched a sweeping invasion of the massive Persian Empire. In his explicit justification for this, he called it a campaign of holy vengeance to punish Persia for historical invasions of Greece that had happened centuries earlier. Imagine holding a grudge for literally centuries. It was a true multi-generational grudge match.
Section 4. Morals, resources, and land. The material and ethical motives.
Sometimes, believe it or not, the motivation isn't actually about gaining anything for yourself, but about protecting others. This is war for moral reasons. Nations will deploy their military forces to foreign lands to protect weak civilian populations and stop systemic atrocities or domestic violence. A really clear historical case of this is the 1998 to 1999 intervention in Kosovo. Multinational coalitions stepped in purely for moral reasons to halt regional ethnic cleansing campaigns. The goal was stopping violence, absolutely not capturing territory.
On the flip side of that, we see fights for pure material survival and strategic advantage. Take the desperate need for resources. In 1931, Imperial Japan urgently needed materials for its growing domestic industry.
So what did they do? They executed a sudden invasion of Manchuria, China, specifically to harvest their iron ore, coal, and agricultural lands. Alternatively, you have the fight for land, specifically critical geographic choke points. Think about the island of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea. Because its location granted absolute naval control over trade routes between Europe and Africa, multinational military struggles raged over that tiny little island for centuries.
Section 5. Trade and Religion, Wealth and Holy Obligations.
When it comes to trade, conflict is centered entirely on commercial access and, well, money. The Anglo-Dutch Wars in the 17th and 18th centuries were fought strictly between the English and the Dutch to disrupt each other's maritime trading monopolies and control global shipping lanes. It was pure business. Now, contrast that with religion. The Crusades, spanning from 1095 to 1291, were a series of massive European Christian military expeditions into the Levant. Their goal, to wrestle control of holy sites away from Islamic empires. It was framed entirely as a holy obligation to protect their faith, creating deep geopolitical fractures that lasted for centuries.
Section 6. Decoding Future Conflicts. How the Past Maps the Future.
Spanning thousands of years, we start way back in 356 BC with Alexander the Great fighting for revenge. Fast forward to 1095 CE with the Crusades fighting for religion. Moving into the 17th century, we have the Anglo-Dutch Wars fought over trade, and all the way up to 1998 CE with the Kosovo intervention driven by morals. So what's the massive takeaway here for you as history investigators? The technology completely changes, from swords and wooden ships to fighter jets and satellites, but these core 8 motives, they remain exactly the same. We are still driven by the exact same things.
Which leaves us with this final, absolutely crucial question. If history repeats itself, and as we've just seen, it for sure does, what will drive the next great conflict? I really want to challenge you today. When you go home and look at the news or hear about a dispute happening somewhere in the world, use this investigator's guide, run it through the 3 rules of war to see if it's a true geopolitical event. Then ask yourself, which of these 8 causes is sparking tomorrow's history? Is it resources? Is it independence? Keep your eyes open, investigators. Thank you so much for exploring this with me.